Hello, I'm Drew Hoffman from UC Davis Sociology. This video provides an overview of the Affordable Care Act, or the ACA. Critics call it Obamacare, and Obama eventually embraced this label himself. But this was probably not the best political decision, since Obama has very low approval ratings at this moment, and these approval ratings may end up tarnishing the program. The American healthcare system, some people call it a non-system, had several main shortcomings before the passage of the ACA, and some of these continue. First, the American healthcare system has the highest expenditures in the world, but does not have better quality, and in fact often has poorer quality than countries that spend much less. In 2010, the United States spent 17.6% of GDP on healthcare, while Canada spent 11.4% and the United Kingdom spent just 9.6%. Just a reminder, GDP equals the sum of all the goods and services produced by an economy in a given year. Second, even with all this spending, the United States did not provide universal coverage. Before the ACA, 14% of the population was uninsured, and the ACA is projected to reduce the number of uninsured only by about half. Third, most insured people were underinsured. Many policies contained lifetime or annual expenditure limits and high levels of cost sharing. Many excluded certain conditions and refused to pay for pre-existing conditions. As a result, many people who believed they were covered for a particular illness episode found their claims denied. A fourth problem was insecure coverage. Because most insurance is employer-sponsored, people often lose their insurance at the worst possible time, when they've lost their job. Others lose coverage when they get divorced or when their employer decides that he or she can no longer afford to provide coverage. Finally, some people are excluded from coverage because they have particular conditions for which insurers do not offer coverage, or because insurers deny coverage on the basis of their health histories. This is called medical underwriting. The ACA sought to address these four problems of cost, uninsurance, underinsurance, and insecurity of coverage. It increased the number of insured people by requiring everyone to sign up for insurance. This is called the individual mandate. It expanded eligibility for Medicaid, the health insurance program for some of the poor, and it provided subsidies to low and middle income people who do not have employer-provided insurance. These people, and some small businesses, can now buy private coverage in a regulated state-level insurance exchange. The reform also provided tax credits for small employers to purchase coverage for their employees, and penalties for large employers who fail to provide insurance for their employees. Finally, the reform required insurers to provide insurance to everyone who applies without medical underwriting and without annual lifetime limits on spending. The ACA seeks to control costs in four main ways. First, it established pilot projects in which the Medicare program attempts to pay for the quality of services rather than the number of services. Second, it established an independent payment advisory board appointed by the President that will propose that successful pilot programs be applied to the entire Medicare population. These recommendations will take effect unless Congress vetoes them. Third, it funded comparative effectiveness research to determine which medical procedures are most efficient and effective. And finally, it taxed expensive employer-provided plans, so-called luxury or Cadillac plans. The reform has its critics. Critics on the left complain that the reform simply pumps more money into a dysfunctional system and forces Americans to buy a defective product. They predict that insurers will game the system so that they can continue to avoid the sick and reject claims. They note that 22 million Americans, about 7% of the population, will remain uninsured under the reform. They are also skeptical about the effectiveness of the cost control measures in the reform and argue that reform should have gone much further on cost control. Many argue that a public single-payer system could cover more people at a lower cost than the ACA, which is built on an existing foundation of private insurance. On the right, Republicans have complained of a government takeover of healthcare and socialized medicine. These claims are clearly exaggerations. The reform leaves the vast majority of the healthcare system in private hands. Most Republican critiques of the bill follow standard tenets of market fundamentalism, the idea that markets can do everything better than the government. This is quite odd because many of the ideas in the reform, including the individual mandate, first appeared in free market Republican alternatives to the Clinton reform attempt of 1994. Most Republican opposition to the bill can be understood as an attempt to deny Obama a victory in order to enhance their electoral prospects. In 1994, Republicans made major gains after the defeat of the Clinton reform, and they learned an important lesson. Obstructionism can pay off in elections. At the same time, the debate over the Obama reform witnessed the emergence of an extreme right-wing faction within the Republican Party, the Tea Party. Tea Party activists erroneously claimed that a measure to fund end-of-life counseling was meant to create death panels who would kill our grandmas. Tea Party activists also claimed that the IPAB would be an instrument for rationing, which is denying needed care to some people while providing it to others. And they have argued that the individual mandate is an unconstitutional violation of personal liberty. This claim was mainly rejected by the Supreme Court. We'll talk more about the specifics of the ACA later in the course, but hopefully this video has given you a brief introduction.